I shaved my beard the day you left, she said. That's the first thing she said. Not hello. Not why she was standing outside my apartment like some ghost from a chapter one never finished reading. Just that. I didn't even recognize her at first. Her hair was darker now, tied back. She wore this oversized gray coat like it was armor, one sleeve falling off her shoulder. And her voice, it cracked like she hadn't used it in days. But her eyes? I knew those eyes. I used to wake up to those eyes. I used to think I'd die with those eyes staring back at me in some hospital bed 60 years from now, whispering that I'd been enough. She stepped forward, and I did what any emotionally stunted man with unresolved trauma would do. I flinched and looked down at the floor. My apartment floor. My safe, pathetic, silent floor. There was no warning. No call. No text. Just a knock and that line about shaving. What are you doing here? I finally managed to ask, though I already hated myself for the weakness in my voice. It came out soft. Pathetic. Just like me. I thought I'd forgotten your voice, she said, ignoring the question. Turns out I didn't. And then she walked right in. Like no time had passed. Like we hadn't destroyed each other in stages, slowly, methodically, behind closed doors, one sarcastic comment at a time. I didn't stop her. I just stood there, still holding a can of tuna I'd been about to open. My dinner. My single guy routine. My quiet life, full of invisible wounds. I need to show you something, she said, pulling a creased envelope from her coat. It was bent like it had been opened and closed 100 times. Like it had history. Like whatever was inside had weight, the kind that breaks your ribs from the inside out. She placed it on my coffee table, then looked at me, really looked. Like she was trying to find the pieces of the man she once loved in a face that barely belonged to me anymore. I'm not staying, she said. I just need you to see what I couldn't say back then. And before I could ask what the hell that meant, she turned and left. Just like I did. 3 years ago. Without goodbye. Without a sound. The door clicked shut. And I just stood there, staring at the envelope, too afraid to touch it. Because I already knew. Whatever was inside was going to ruin me. I didn't touch the envelope for 11 hours. Not right away. Not after she left. Not even after the sky turned that sickly blue-gray it always does when it's too late to pretend you're going to be productive. I just stared at it, like it might hiss or move or speak first. I watched an entire nature documentary on mute with subtitles, ate half a granola bar I found in a drawer, and took 3 showers, trying to scrub off whatever energy she brought with her. Because it wasn't just her standing in my doorway this time. It was everything I tried to bury, and yet I couldn't throw it away. Eventually, sometime past 2 a.m., I gave in. My fingers were trembling like I was defusing a bomb. I peeled the flap open slowly, like the damn paper might bite me. Inside was a single page, folded twice, and a smaller photo, square-shaped, faded at the corners, like it had lived in someone's wallet too long. The letter wasn't handwritten. It was typed. That already told me something. Ava always typed when she wanted distance. She typed when she filed complaints, when she ended friendships, when she told her dad she wasn't coming home for Thanksgiving that year. Typing was her armor. Ink was too intimate, too honest. It started simple. There are things I should have told you before you left. But I didn't know how to say them without breaking something that was already shattered. You weren't crazy. You weren't wrong. I just didn't know how to be the person you needed, and I hated you for seeing that. I read that line 6 times. You weren't crazy. You weren't wrong. Do you know what that does to a man who's been gaslit for 2 years straight? Who was told over and over that he was overthinking things, that he was paranoid, that maybe you should talk to someone? She continued. I told myself you abandoned me, that you were weak for walking out. But the truth is, I gave you 1,000 reasons to go. And you finally did. I hated you for that. But I hated myself more. There was more. So much more. But my eyes drifted down to the photo before I finished. It was a picture of a boy, maybe 2 years old, sitting in a sandbox with one sock on, grinning like he didn't know the world could be cruel yet. His smile looked familiar. His ears, the shape of his chin, the way his left eye squinted more than the right. I dropped the photo, staggered back like it hit me. It wasn't just any kid. That was my son, and I had never seen him before tonight. My heart stopped. Or maybe it sped up so fast I couldn't tell the difference. I kept looking between the letter and the photo, trying to make sense of what I was holding, trying to understand how the world had moved this far without me. And the letter? It ended like this. He's yours. I never told you because I didn't think you'd want anything from me again. But you deserve to know. He asks about his dad. And I don't know how much longer I can lie. No name. No phone number. No address. Just a photo. A typed confession. And the echo of a life I didn't know I'd lost. I didn't sleep. Not even a second. I sat in the same spot on the couch all night, clutching that photo until the corners curled from the heat of my hand. Every few minutes, I'd look back down at the boy's face, like it might change, like it might become someone else's kid. But it didn't. He just sat there in that sandbox, one sock missing, with my lopsided grin and my brother's stupid squint. I must have whispered, "What the hell did you do, Ava?" 20 times before the sun came up. The thing is, I never wanted kids. Or maybe I did and just convinced myself I didn't because the thought of being a terrible father scared me more than being alone forever. My own dad was a drunk ghost who floated through our living room twice a month and smelled like guilt and gasoline. I always told myself I wouldn't repeat that cycle, that if I couldn't be perfect, I wouldn't try at all. And now here I was, discovering that I'd already failed at being a father without even knowing it. I didn't have her number anymore. I didn't have her address. No way to find her. She left me with nothing but a letter full of regret and a photo of a tiny stranger who somehow looked more like me than I liked to admit. That day, I called in sick. First time in 11 months. My boss at the antique shop barely noticed. I think he muttered something about self-care and went back to cataloging fake Civil War swords. I couldn't concentrate on anything. I just walked. For hours. Past shops, past people, past the coffee shop Ava used to love when she visited. I half expected to see her sitting inside, arms crossed, smirking like this was all just a weird test I failed. But she wasn't there. She was nowhere. She wanted me to know about the boy, yes. But not enough to stay. Not enough to talk. And that made something inside me snap. I went home, ripped open the storage bin in my closet, started digging through old junk I hadn't touched since the move. Somewhere in there was an old laptop, one she'd used before she got her fancy work MacBook. It was dusty. The charger was frayed. But when I plugged it in and powered it up, I was shocked it even worked. The password was still the same. Our anniversary. I felt like I was breaking into a dead woman's life. Everything was untouched. Dozens of folders, work reports, resumes, calendar files, and then one folder buried at the bottom, untitled. No caps. Just like that. The kind of name you give something you don't want to be found. Inside were hundreds of pictures. Not of me. Not of her. Of him. The boy. Photos from the hospital. From his first steps. From messy spaghetti dinners and bedtime books. His birthday cake said Elliot in shaky blue icing. I said his name out loud. Elliot, and it felt like swallowing glass. Because she hadn't just kept him from me. She raised him like I never existed. And then I found it. A short video file. 1 minute long. No title. I clicked. It was her. Ava. Sitting on the edge of a bed. She looked different. Not done-up Ava. Not public Ava. Just tired. Soft. Real. She held the camera close to her chest and whispered, "If you're seeing this, it means I finally told you. I hope you hate me a little less when you realize I didn't know how to let you back in." Then she turned the camera. Elliot was asleep beside her. Tiny. Peaceful. Curled against her arm like she was the only safe place on earth. And then the screen went black. I watched that video 17 times. Not because I couldn't believe it. I could. Because I didn't know what else to do. Each time I hit replay, I tried to focus on something different. The way her voice shook at the end. The frayed edge of the blanket behind her. The way Elliot's fingers twitched while he slept, like he was dreaming about something important. The kind of dreams little kids have before the world teaches them disappointment. It felt obscene, honestly. Like I was spying on a life that was supposed to be mine, only I'd been edited out. She looked exhausted in that video, but not miserable, not broken, just like someone who had carried too many secrets for too long and finally let one fall out of her mouth. And the way she said, "I hope you hate me a little less." God, that line. It played on repeat in my head like a bad song. The truth was, I didn't hate her. Not in the way I probably should have. I hated myself more. For not fighting harder. For walking out and making it so easy to erase me. And now here I was, a footnote in a boy's life. A ghost with a matching chin. I spent the rest of the night digging deeper into her files. Searching through metadata, old receipts, anything that might give me a clue where she was. There was a birthday party photo tagged with a location, some town I'd never heard of, 2 hours north. I zoomed in. A pizza place. A damn bouncy house. I looked up the town. It had a diner, a hardware store, and one elementary school. And that's when I did something I swore I wouldn't. I called Jason. Jason was the one person who still spoke to both of us, sort of. He was her cousin, technically, but we'd been roommates in college. He always acted like Switzerland during the breakup. Never took sides. Never answered when I asked what he knew. But now I needed him to break his neutrality. I didn't tell him everything. Just enough. Told him she'd shown up at my place. Told him she'd dropped a bomb and vanished. I expected him to lie. To cover for her. But instead, there was silence on the other end. A long one. Then, she said you'd find out eventually. I didn't think she meant this way. So he knew. She's in Fairbridge, he said. Has been for a couple years. Keeps a low profile. Works part-time at a bookstore. Nobody there knows anything about you. I asked about Elliot. He hesitated again. He thinks his dad's away. Traveling. Doing something important. That's all she told him. Important. I hadn't been important to anyone in 3 years, and suddenly I was some mythical figure in a kid's bedtime story. I thanked him. He said not to tell her he broke her trust. I said I wouldn't. I lied. The next morning, I packed a bag. I didn't know what I was planning to do once I got there. I had no right to knock on her door. No script. No plan. Just this building pressure in my chest that felt like something between panic and purpose. Before I left, I looked at the photo one more time. Elliot. That name meant nothing to me 3 days ago. And now it was tattooed across every thought I had. The boy who had my eyes. Deserved more than a ghost for a father. Fairbridge wasn't on any maps people actually used. The kind of place you pass through on the way to somewhere else, where the gas station doubles as a sandwich shop and everyone waves at each other like it's still 1976. It had exactly one stoplight, and I ran it because I was too focused on my GPS to notice. It didn't even feel real at first. Like someone built the whole town for a movie set and forgot to take it down. I parked 2 blocks away from the bookstore. I didn't know what I was doing. Only that I couldn't just knock on her door like a lunatic from the past and say, hey, surprise. Turns out I'm a dad. My hands were shaking so badly, I couldn't even finish the coffee I'd bought. I just sat in the rental car and stared at the little shop across the street. Ava was inside. I saw her through the window, sorting books, laughing at something a coworker said. She looked calm, like a version of her I'd never met. No blazer, no forced smile, no stress vein pulsing in her temple. Just jeans and a sweater and the kind of peace I always thought she was incapable of. It made me furious, and ashamed, and confused. I sat there for an hour, maybe more. I memorized how she tucked her hair behind her ear when she wasn't thinking. How she glanced toward the door every time the bell jingled, just in case someone important walked in. But she never saw me. I didn't go inside. I couldn't. Instead, I waited until she left. She walked out with a canvas tote over her shoulder and a paper cup in her hand. She turned down a side street. I followed from a distance like some pathetic stalker. I told myself I was doing recon, that I needed to know where they lived before I did anything stupid. They lived in a duplex. One side clearly hers. Garden tools leaning against the siding. A red tricycle near the steps. I waited. Sat on a bench at the edge of the park nearby, pretending to scroll my phone. Watched until the sun dipped low and the streetlights hummed on. And then I saw him. Elliot. Running out the front door like a tornado, hair wild, face glowing. Ava stepped out behind him, calling after him gently, like this was routine. He darted across the small yard and dropped to his knees in the grass, inspecting something I couldn't see. I didn't breathe. He was bigger now. Maybe 3, maybe 4. The photo hadn't prepared me for the real thing. The movement, the voice, the way he laughed like nothing in the world could hurt him. My son was alive and happy and completely unaware that I even existed. And that's when it hit me. I didn't belong here. Not yet. Not without a plan. Not without an apology. Not without some version of myself I could actually introduce as his father. I got up and left before they saw me. Drove back to the motel on the edge of town and collapsed onto a bed that smelled like bleach and dust. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning above me and realized for the first time in my life, I wasn't running away from something. I was running toward it. But what the hell do you say to the woman who erased you? To the child who never learned your name? To the version of yourself you left behind in a cracked mug on a kitchen counter? I didn't sleep that night. Because tomorrow, I was going to knock on her door. and pray she answered it. I didn't knock right away. I stood on the sidewalk across from her duplex for 27 minutes. I counted. Every 5 seconds I told myself, go now, just go. And every time I took a step, something in my chest locked up like a door being bolted shut from the inside. I was terrified. Not of her slamming the door in my face. I could survive that. I'd survived worse. What scared me was the possibility she wouldn't slam it. That she'd look at me like I wasn't real. Like I had no place in this chapter of her life. But at 8:41 a.m., she stepped outside to toss something in the recycling bin. And that's when she saw me. She froze. Her hand still clutched the lid of the bin. And her face. I'll never forget the way her face changed. Not angry. Not scared. Just devastated. Like she'd been waiting for this moment and dreading it at the same time. She didn't move. Neither did I. Then she whispered, "What are you doing here?" Her voice was smaller than I remembered. It wasn't the Ava who used to win boardrooms and bulldoze through my excuses. It was someone else. Someone softer. Someone who looked tired of pretending she was strong. I took a shaky step forward. "You showed up at my door. Left a photo. A letter. What did you think I was going to do?" "I didn't think you'd come," she said. Her voice cracked on the last word. She walked slowly up to the porch and opened the front door. I followed without thinking, like I was tethered to her shadow. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and laundry. Toys scattered across the floor. A bookshelf with a mix of cookbooks and parenting guides. It was a real home, not like the sterile apartments we used to live in. It felt lived in, warm, and entirely not mine. She didn't offer me coffee. Didn't ask how I'd been. She just pointed to the couch and said, "You can sit, but you have to listen." So I sat, and I listened. She paced for a moment before speaking. Then she took a breath, so deep it felt like she was trying to pull the air back into the last 3 years of her life. "I found out 2 weeks after you left," she said. "I thought about calling. I even picked up the phone a dozen times. But I couldn't. I hated you, and I needed you, and I couldn't tell the difference anymore. I told myself you wouldn't want the responsibility, that you'd say I did it on purpose, that I was trapping you. So I said nothing. I wanted to scream, not at her, but at time itself, at the universe, at whatever cruel thing let us both become versions of ourselves we didn't recognize. "You should have told me," I said. "I know," she whispered. And when he started asking questions about his dad, I didn't have answers. I panicked. I told him you were on a trip, that you were somewhere important. And then I hated myself for lying, so I drove to your address. Just to see you, just to look at you once, and maybe finally feel okay about what I did. But when you opened that door, I couldn't speak. I didn't expect you to still look like." She stopped, biting the inside of her cheek. There was a long silence. Then, slowly, she pulled a phone from the kitchen counter and tapped something on the screen. A moment later, I heard it. Tiny footsteps. Coming down the hallway. And then he was there. Elliot. Holding a toy truck. Blinking at me like he wasn't sure if I was real or a stranger from a story. "Elliot," Ava said gently, kneeling beside him. "This is someone very special I want you to meet." I stood, heart racing, knees weak. And in that moment, I knew. No matter what happened next, whether she forgave me, whether he understood, whether I ever earned a place in this life again, I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. The door between us was open now, and I had to walk through it. He didn't speak right away, just stood there in his dinosaur pajamas, barefoot, clutching that plastic truck like it was a shield. His eyes darted from Ava to me, then back again, trying to decode what exactly was happening. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat felt like it had been sewn shut. Ava put a hand on his back and said, gently, "This is someone who used to be very close to me. Someone who went away for a while. Do you want to say hi?" Elliot stared at me, expression unreadable. Then, without looking away, he asked her in a whisper I wasn't supposed to hear, "Is he mad?" And that broke me. No child should meet a stranger who looks like them and have their first instinct be fear. I shook my head, dropped to one knee, carefully, so I wasn't towering over him, and said, "No, buddy, I'm not mad at all. I'm just really, really happy to meet you." He didn't smile, but he didn't run either. Instead, he walked forward, hesitated for a moment, and then placed his truck in my hand. No words, just a gesture, and it was the kindest thing anyone had done for me in 3 years. We didn't talk much after that, not about the important stuff. Ava gave him breakfast while I sat on the floor and watched him eat cereal, kick his legs against the table leg, giggle at a cartoon playing quietly on the TV. Every few minutes, he'd glance at me like he was checking if I was still real. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. I couldn't ruin that moment with my own mess. Afterward, when Elliot went to his room for quiet time, Ava and I sat on the back porch. She handed me a mug, not the llama one, not anything sentimental, just a plain white mug. Her way of saying we were strangers again. I accepted it. I know you probably have 1,000 things you want to say, she said, but you don't have to say them all today. I didn't answer right away. The wind picked up slightly, brushing her hair into her eyes. She didn't fix it, just stared at the horizon like it had more answers than I ever could. I missed everything, I finally said. His first word, his first steps, his first birthday. Every night he cried, I wasn't there. I know, she said. You gotta know him. Watch him become a person. I just disappeared. You didn't disappear, she said. I pushed you out. Those words sat between us like a live wire. She took a deep breath. I didn't want to need you. That's what it was. You leaving gave me an excuse to raise him without help. And I told myself it was safer that way, that I could protect him from disappointment. But I was wrong. I looked at her then, really looked at her. This wasn't the Ava I remembered. The woman who always had an answer, who built walls so thick not even daylight got through. This was someone else. Someone just as broken as me. I want to be in his life, I said. Not to take him, not to undo what you've built, just to know him, to show up. She didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, quietly, that's going to take time. I've got time, I said. More than I deserve. She nodded. Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. Then she said something I'll never forget. He draws pictures of you. I blinked. What? In his stories. In his make-believe games. You're the guy who sends him treasure maps. The one who flies planes and leaves him clues. He made you a hero, even without knowing who you really were. It took everything in me not to break down right there. Because in his world, I wasn't a ghost. I was someone worth imagining. And now, finally, I had the chance to become real. It didn't happen overnight. There was no montage, no swelling music, no magical moment where everything healed. It was slow, awkward, uneven. Some days, I sat on their porch and read Elliot picture books while he interrupted every 5 seconds to correct me. Other days, he wouldn't come near me at all. He'd glare from the hallway, arms crossed, sizing me up like a stranger who didn't belong. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. I was a stranger, a man who showed up late to his own life. But I kept showing up. Ava gave me boundaries. Strict ones. No overnights. No unscheduled visits. No big gifts. He doesn't need to be impressed, she told me. He just needs you to be steady. So I was. I stayed in Fairbridge. Got a cheap one-bedroom with leaky faucets and questionable wiring. Took a job at the mechanic shop 3 blocks from their place. Every morning, I walked by their street and waited for him to wave from the window. He didn't always. But when he did, even just a flick of his fingers, it carried me through the day. One afternoon, I picked him up from preschool for the first time. Ava had a meeting, and after weeks of small steps, she finally trusted me enough to handle it. I stood outside the building, sweating through my shirt, convinced he'd cry or pretend not to know me. But he ran out with a grin. He grabbed my hand, like it was the most natural thing in the world, and said, "Can we get ice cream? The kind with the sprinkles?" So we did. We sat on a curb outside the shop, sticky fingers, brain freeze, chocolate on his cheek. He told me about his day. A class turtle named Marvin, a girl named Nora who bit someone, and a drawing he made of a rocket ship that definitely works in real life. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "My mom says you used to live on a mountain." I blinked. Well, not really a mountain. More like a hill. But it felt tall when I was your age. He nodded, deeply serious. "You should take me there sometime. Maybe we could camp. Just us. You and me." Something caught in my throat. I tried to speak, but it came out as a laugh. Then he licked his spoon and said it. So casual. So offhand. "Okay, Dad." I froze. He didn't even look at me when he said it. He was too busy stacking napkins like bricks. To him, it wasn't a big moment. Just a word that finally made sense. A word that had lived in his stories and games and drawings, and now had a real face. I wanted to grab him and hold him and cry and apologize and explain everything. But I didn't. I just nodded and said, "Yeah, buddy, we'll go." A week later, Ava joined us for a walk in the woods. Elliot collected rocks and told us which ones were magic. She smiled more than I'd seen in years. At one point, we all sat by a lake, quiet, watching ducks fight over nothing. And she looked at me and said, "You're doing okay." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a promise. But it was something. A crack of light through a door that had once been slammed shut. Now, we're not a perfect family. We don't have to be. But we're here. Together. Trying. And every time Elliot says, "Dad," I remember the version of me that walked away. And I promise myself I'll never be him again.